The phone would not stop vibrating on the mahogany nightstand. 47 missed calls had registered by Wednesday evening, escalating to 63 by Thursday twilight. By Friday morning, as the first rays of dawn filtered into my living room, the digital counter displayed 103 missed calls. Every silent pulse on the screen sent a quiet wave of profound satisfaction through my chest as I sat in my new high-rise apartment, fresh coffee in hand, watching my former employer's enterprise infrastructure crumble from the outside. 5 days earlier, I had calmly walked out of Nexus Systems with nothing more than a single cardboard box containing my personal belongings and an unbothered smile that bewildered every colleague who witnessed it. My direct department director, Gordon Bradley, had just gathered the team to announce that the senior systems architect promotion, an executive-level advancement I had spent 3 grueling years earning, was being handed to someone else. It was not awarded to a veteran engineer, but rather to Julian Thorne, the quintessential office favorite, who could not write a basic SQL query to save his life, but possessed an uncanniness for playing golf with upper management on weekends and dropping expensive pastries in executive break rooms. I had congratulated Julian with genuine composure, warmly shaking his hand before offering Gordon a polite nod. Then, I returned to my workstation, systematically disabled the proprietary automated recovery scripts I had personally authored to keep our server arrays online, documented precisely nothing extra in my departure log, and tendered my immediate resignation effective that afternoon. Nobody saw the storm coming. Nobody understood the sheer operational bedrock they were about to lose. Before the full series of events unfolds, there is something essential to mention. This channel is dedicated to reaching 5,000 subscribers, bringing together professionals who value self-respect, technical integrity, and knowing when to walk away from toxic corporate exploitation. If that mission speaks to your own journey, clicking that subscribe button below makes a real difference. No pressure at all, just an open invitation to join a community of people who refuse to compromise their dignity for a paycheck. My name is Malcolm Vance. At 48 years old, I had devoted 6 years of my life to Nexus Systems, ascending from a senior software engineer to the lead systems architect, who essentially anchored the company's entire back-end ecosystem with custom algorithmic safeguards and endless late-night maintenance. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where my parents operated an independent electronics repair store. My father taught me early in life that competence without ethics was hollow, and my mother showed me that hard work must always be paired with unwavering self-respect. They ran their store by treating every customer with dignity, fixing radios for elderly neighbors who could barely afford groceries, but never allowing entitled suppliers to push them around. That Midwestern upbringing instilled in me a grounded perspective that is far too rare in the high-stakes technology sector. I understood human nature. I understood technical craftsmanship, and I knew precisely when an employer had crossed the line from professional reliance into systemic exploitation. Gordon Bradley had taken my dedication for granted for far too long, and on that fateful Tuesday morning, he pushed his luck one step too far. The Tuesday morning of the announcement began like any standard work shift. I arrived at the corporate center at 7:30 in the morning, a full hour before the main staff arrived, to verify that overnight data reconciliation jobs had executed without errors. They had executed flawlessly, as they always did whenever my custom automated routines were monitoring the pipelines. Nexus Systems was a prominent mid-sized software corporation that provided critical logistics management software to approximately 800 enterprise clients across North America. Our client base included regional hospitals, regional banking networks, and municipal transportation systems. Server downtime was not merely an annoying delay, it represented severe operational disruption, potential safety risks, and thousands of dollars per minute in regulatory penalties. That bulletproof stability was entirely my doing, though you would never discover that by reading company press releases or quarterly organizational newsletters. 3 years ago, when the old infrastructure was buckling under explosive user growth, I spearheaded a complete ground-up redesign of our back-end architecture. I authored real-time anomaly detection software that identified database lockups before they turned into system-wide crashes. I wrote self-healing failover scripts that rerouted server traffic in under 30 seconds without human intervention. I conducted rigorous code reviews and spent countless evenings mentoring junior developers. My annual performance appraisals were consistently rated as exceptional. Gordon Bradley repeatedly told me in private that I was the indispensable backbone of the technical operations. Yet every single time a promotional cycle opened, Gordon produced a smooth excuse to delay my advancement. Next quarter, after the budget review, when the current enterprise migration wraps up, or when the board approves new salary bands. 3 full years of empty promises and shifting goalposts. Then 18 months ago, Gordon hired Julian Thorne into the department. Julian was, objectively speaking, an average mid-level developer at best. He could follow basic architectural blueprints and complete routine bug fixes, but he lacked deep technical intuition. He did not possess the capacity to diagnose complex memory leaks or anticipate system bottlenecks under peak load. What Julian truly excelled at was strategic corporate visibility. He joined every voluntary steering committee, spoke up eloquently in executive meetings even when he had no technical input, remembered every senior manager's birthday, and spent his Saturday mornings at the local country club playing golf with Gordon Bradley and corporate executives. I did not hold any personal malice toward Julian for his political maneuvering. Navigating office hierarchy was a skill set in its own right. However, what I vehemently rejected was management's flawed assumption that political charisma equated to architectural leadership, or that social charm could replace hard-earned technical expertise. 6 months prior to the announcement, Gordon had officially created the position of Senior Systems Architect. He pulled me into his office after a department meeting and said, "Malcolm, this position is tailored specifically for you. Bring me a comprehensive blueprint for our third-quarter cloud infrastructure migration, and we will formalize your promotion with executive leadership." I spent the next 4 months designing an absolute masterwork of cloud architecture. Containerized microservices, zero downtime deployment channels, dynamic load balancing, and advanced encryption protocols. I prototyped the entire infrastructure on my personal hardware during my off hours, meticulously documented every technical decision, authored training manuals for the junior staff, and presented an operational roadmap that guaranteed to save Nexus Systems approximately $300,000 annually in server overhead. Gordon was ecstatic. The corporate chief technology officer was thoroughly impressed. The executive board praised the presentation as flawless. Gordon shook my hand in front of the VP of Engineering and stated, "This is the exact strategic vision we need in our senior systems architect. Let me finish the paperwork with human resources by the end of the month." That promise was made 6 weeks prior. On this particular Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, Gordon convened a mandatory all-hands engineering meeting in the central conference room. Standing at the front of the room, radiating unearned enthusiasm, Gordon began his address. "Team, I have a monumental announcement today. As you know, we created the Senior Systems Architect position to guide our technical trajectory into the next decade. After extensive evaluation, I am thrilled to announce that Julian Thorne will be taking on the role of Senior Systems Architect." A heavy silence settled over the room before polite, scattered applause broke out. Julian appeared modestly surprised, though his polished smile betrayed a prior awareness. He stood up, shook Gordon's hand, and delivered a brief, rehearsed speech about driving collaborative excellence and empowering team synergy. I sat calmly in my chair, joining the applause, keeping my expression pleasant and composed. Inside my mind, however, a crystalline clarity took hold. The long era of my quiet exploitation at Nexus Systems had officially come to an end. Following the adjournment of the meeting, Gordon tapped my shoulder and asked me to step into his corner office. He closed the glass door, gestured toward a leather armchair, and cleared his throat nervously. "Malcolm, I know you were anticipating taking that role," Gordon began, avoiding direct eye contact. "I want to emphasize that this decision in no way reflects negatively on your technical capabilities. You are undeniably one of the finest engineers in this industry." "Thank you, Gordon." I replied evenly, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. The reality is, Gordon continued, leaning back in his executive chair, the senior systems architect role requires someone who can seamlessly interface with corporate stakeholders, represent the department in executive boardrooms, and command a room with high-level soft skills. Julian possesses that unique executive presence. Soft skills are what clients and board members respond to. Soft skills. That was the convenient corporate label Gordon applied to brush aside 3 years of 60-hour work weeks. An infrastructure overhaul that saved $300,000, comprehensive system documentation, and endless technical mentorship. I completely understand, I said, looking him dead in the eye, and I truly did. I understood with absolute precision. Gordon let out a visible sigh of relief, clearly assuming I was going to accept the outcome meekly. I am so glad you are approaching this with such maturity, Malcolm. The truth is, Nexus Systems needs you right where you are. You are far too valuable on the ground, keeping the entire back-end infrastructure running without a hitch. Julian will manage the high-level strategic vision, but we fundamentally depend on your technical execution. The corporate translation was stark and undeniable. Julian would claim the high salary, executive title, and public accolades for my architectural innovations, while I would remain stuck at my current compensation level, continuing to do the actual heavy lifting without any chance of career progression. That makes perfect logical sense, I stated calmly. Gordon beamed with satisfaction, standing up to extend his hand. I knew I could count on you, Malcolm. You are the ultimate team player. I shook his hand, stepped out of his office, and walked back to my desk. For 20 minutes, I sat before my dual monitors in absolute tranquility. There was no anger burning in my veins, no resentment, no urge to engage in a loud confrontation. There was only cold, calculated, pragmatic clarity. I opened my financial portfolio on my phone. Through decades of disciplined saving and conservative investments, I had amassed enough capital to cover my living expenses for 14 full months without earning a single dollar. I checked my professional correspondence. Over the past month, 4 executive talent recruiters had reached out with preliminary inquiries regarding senior cloud architecture roles. The labor market for an architect with my specialized credentials was exceptionally strong. I opened a private text file and began auditing my personal contractual obligations and statutory employment rights under state labor law and federal regulations. Under the provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act and standard executive employment agreements, my contract specified an at-will employment relationship, permitting immediate resignation provided that 2 weeks of accrued leave or salary compensation was surrendered in lieu of advance notice. More importantly, I reviewed the legal boundaries surrounding intellectual property under Title 17 of the United States Code Section 201 subsection B regarding works made for hire. The specialized monitoring tools, custom predictive failover scripts, and anomaly detection algorithms I had implemented over the years were written entirely on my personal laptop, on my own personal time, prior to company deployment. While Nexus Systems possessed a exclusive operational license to the code running on their servers, they did not own the underlying personal automation workflows that I routinely executed to maintain system stability. Furthermore, I was keenly aware of the Defend Trade Secrets Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 1836, as well as the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act under 18 U.S.C. Section 1030. I had zero intention of deleting company data, wiping repositories, or committing any form of digital sabotage. That would be unethical and illegal. Instead, I intended to perform a completely lawful, passive withdrawal of my personal uncompensated maintenance automation. I initiated a systematic review of my automated environment. First, I accessed my personal cron configuration files. I did not delete a single line of operational code from the company's master repository. Doing so would violate company policies and statutory data protection laws. Instead, I simply toggled the execution flags from active to inactive. The automated monitoring loops that caught database deadlocks before they caused server outages were simply paused. The background memory cleaning utilities were disabled. The custom load balancing parameters I had tuned were reverted to the default factory configurations provided by the off-the-shelf server software. Everything remained intact in the code repositories, but the automated safety net that invisibly caught every infrastructure glitch was completely turned off. Without my automated safety nets, Nexus Systems' backend was returning to the exact state it had been in 3 years prior. It was functional under basic, low-traffic conditions, but utterly fragile under peak load. The moment a traffic spike occurred, or a database query stalled, there would be no automated script to catch the failure and silently reboot the processes. The engineering staff would have to diagnose and resolve every single emergency manually, assuming they even knew where to look. Next, I accessed my personal cloud drive. The 400-page comprehensive documentation manual for the upcoming third-quarter cloud migration, the project Gordon had promised would secure my promotion, had been authored entirely on my personal laptop during my off hours. It had never been uploaded to the company's shared drive. I transferred the manual to an encrypted offline storage drive and deleted it from my local temp folders. The entire process took approximately 3 hours. My colleagues assumed I was simply working on routine maintenance tasks. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my work was complete. I printed a formal resignation letter, signed it with a black fountain pen, and walked directly into Gordon Bradley's office. Gordon was reviewing a spreadsheet on his computer when I entered his office. He looked up, smiling. "What can I do for you, Malcolm?" I placed the envelope on his desk. He picked it up, opened the letter, and read the brief, professional text. His face instantly drained of color. His relaxed demeanor vanished, replaced by an expression of sheer panic. "Effective immediately?" Gordon stammered, staring at the paper. "Malcolm, what is this? Is this about the promotion announcement this morning? Look, we can sit down with HR right now. We can discuss a salary adjustment, a special title change, maybe a lead architect distinction." "I appreciate the gesture, Gordon," I replied in a steady voice. "However, my decision is final. I will pack my personal belongings and vacate the premises within the hour." Gordon stood up abruptly, leaning over his desk. "You cannot simply resign with zero's notice. What about the enterprise server maintenance? What about the third-quarter cloud migration project? We have client contracts that mandate 99.9% uptime." "The baseline codebase is fully stored in the corporate repository," I said smoothly. "Any qualified engineer should be capable of maintaining standard operations. As for the third-quarter migration strategy, I am confident that Julian Thorne, with his superior strategic vision and executive soft skills, will guide the company through it flawlessly." Gordon's face flushed deep red. "Malcolm, be reasonable. You owe this team at least 2 weeks of standard transition notice. According to Section 4 of my employment contract," I noted calmly, "immediate resignation is permitted through the forfeiture of 2 weeks' accrued salary. I have already communicated with Human Resources to confirm that this satisfies all legal requirements under state labor guidelines. My departure is entirely legal and fully compliant." "This is incredibly unprofessional," Gordon snapped, his voice rising in frustration. "After everything Nexus Systems has done for your career." I looked at him silently for a moment, letting the absurdity of his statement hang in the air. "I have provided this company with 6 years of exceptional service, saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in operational costs, and maintained bulletproof system reliability. My resignation is effective immediately." I turned around and walked out of his office, leaving Gordon staring in stunned silence. Packing my desk took less than half an hour. I placed my personal reference manuals, my favorite ceramic coffee mug, a framed photograph of my parents' shop in Ohio, and a small desk plant into a single cardboard box. A few software engineers stopped by my cubicle, expressing shock at my sudden departure. I offered each of them a warm handshake, explaining simply that an exceptional new opportunity had arisen and wishing them continued success. As I was sealing the box, Julian Thorne walked over, looking visibly uneasy. "Malcolm, I just heard the news from Gordon. I want you to know that I had no idea you were being considered for the architect role. I never meant to step on your toes." I looked at Julian and realized he was telling the truth. He was not a malicious person, merely an opportunistic climber who operated within a flawed corporate culture that rewarded style over substance. "Congratulations on the promotion, Julian," I said sincerely. I wish you the best of luck in managing the architecture. Julian hesitated. Is there any chance I could buy you lunch next week? Just to go over some of the custom server scripts? Gordon mentioned you had built some back-end monitoring tools that keep the cluster stable. All company code remains in the repository, I replied with a polite smile. Good luck, Julian. I picked up my box and walked out of the building at 2:15 on Tuesday afternoon. The afternoon sun was warm against my face as I loaded the box into the trunk of my sedan. I sat in the driver's seat, took a deep, refreshing breath, turned the key in the ignition, and drove away from Nexus Systems. The first phone call arrived on Wednesday morning at 9:15. It was Gordon Bradley. I allowed the call to go directly to voicemail. Malcolm, it is Gordon, his voice recorded, sounding noticeably tense. I think we reacted too rashly yesterday morning. We really need to sit down and talk. Please call me back as soon as you get this. I deleted the voicemail without replying. By Wednesday's afternoon, 3 more missed calls from Gordon registered on my screen, along with 2 calls from Natalie, the Director of Human Resources. By Thursday morning, the corporate CTO, Harold Montgomery, attempted to call my mobile device. Harold was an executive who had rarely spoken to me directly in 6 years, despite relying entirely on the stability of the infrastructure I maintained. I answered none of them. While my phone vibrated in the other room, I spent Thursday enjoying a long morning at a quiet local coffee shop, reviewing my professional portfolio. I submitted my updated resume to 3 executive recruiting firms. Within 2 hours, all 3 recruiters contacted me, requesting immediate interviews with top-tier technology firms in the region. By Thursday evening, the back-end infrastructure at Nexus Systems began experiencing its first severe operational tremors. Without my automated monitoring scripts to silently clear memory deadlocks and balance server loads, main database servers began staggering under peak client traffic. A major regional hospital network and 2 mid-sized banking clients experienced severe latency issues and unexpected service dropouts. On Friday morning, I woke up to a barrage of 35 notifications. Among them was a text message and an urgent voicemail from Gordon Bradley. Malcolm, please call me back immediately. Gordon's voicemail began, his voice strained with evident panic. We are experiencing catastrophic server latency across multiple client nodes. The automated failover routines are not executing. I am authorized by executive management to offer you an emergency consulting rate of $200 per hour if you can log in remotely and resolve these system bottlenecks. Please, Malcolm, call me right away. $200 per hour. My former hourly compensation at Nexus Systems had calculated to approximately $62 per hour. It was remarkable how rapidly my technical expertise had tripled in monetary value the moment the safety net vanished. Shortly after Gordon's message, a voicemail from CTO Harold Montgomery came through. Malcolm, this is Harold Montgomery. We are facing critical infrastructure challenges that require your immediate technical intervention. Please contact my direct line today so we can structure an appropriate resolution. Finally, Natalie from Human Resources left a carefully worded message requesting an emergency exit debrief to facilitate knowledge transfer regarding custom server configurations. Knowledge transfer was the corporate euphemism management deployed when they suddenly realized that nobody remaining in the building understood how the core systems actually functioned. I deleted every single message, turned off my phone notifications, and went for a 5-mile run through the park. On Friday afternoon, I met virtually with Danielle Palmer, the Vice President of Engineering at Vanguard Tech Solutions, a premier enterprise software developer and direct competitor to Nexus Systems. Vanguard had a stellar industry reputation for fostering technical excellence, maintaining flat management structures, and compensating senior engineering talent exceptional salaries. Malcolm, Danielle said warmly during our video conference, we have followed the performance metrics of Nexus Systems infrastructure for years. Your reputation as an architectural mastermind precedes you. We were astonished to learn you were available. Thank you, Danielle, I replied. I am seeking an environment where architectural integrity and technical craftsmanship are genuinely valued. We are looking for a principal systems architect to oversee our next-generation cloud ecosystem, Danielle explained. We offer a base salary of $190,000 annually, a 20% performance bonus, executive equity options, full remote flexibility, and a dedicated team of 5 senior engineers reporting directly to you. $190,000. That represented a 58% increase over my compensation at Nexus Systems. More importantly, the organizational structure at Vanguard ensured that technical leadership reported directly to executive engineering leadership rather than non-technical department directors like Gordon. On Saturday morning, my phone rang once again. This time it was CTO Harold Montgomery calling from his personal line. Out of professional courtesy, I answered the call. "Malcolm, thank you for taking my call," Harold said, his tone heavy with stress. "I will be entirely candid with you. We experienced 17 major service disruptions over the last 48 hours. Our enterprise clients are furious, and our internal team is struggling to stabilize the database clusters. We now understand that you built proprietary automation tools that kept our entire operation running. I implemented custom monitoring routines to ensure reliability." "Yes," I responded calmly. "However, as I was an at-will employee whose contributions were deemed secondary to administrative soft skills, those personal tools are no longer active." A long silence ensued on the line. "Malcolm," Harold continued, clearing his throat, "I take full responsibility for failing to recognize your true impact. Gordon Bradley mismanaged this situation entirely. I am prepared to offer you the senior systems architect position immediately, accompanied by a 40% salary increase, a $30,000 signing bonus, and a direct reporting line to my office. We will reassign Gordon away from technical operations." A week earlier, such an offer would have represented the absolute pinnacle of my career goals at Nexus Systems. Yet as I listened to Harold's desperate proposal, my father's wisdom echoed clearly in my mind. There is a profound difference between being needed out of panic and being genuinely valued for who you are. Nexus Systems did not suddenly value my intelligence or character. They simply desperately needed to eliminate an agonizing operational inconvenience. "I appreciate your offer, Harold," I stated with calm finality. "However, I have accepted a principal systems architect role with another organization." Harold exhaled slowly over the line. "I understand. Is there anything we can do regarding the automation scripts?" "The baseline code remains in the company repository under my legacy folder," I explained. "Any competent software engineer can analyze and deploy them given sufficient time. You have my full permission to utilize and modify those scripts as you see fit under our original employment agreement." "That is exceptionally fair of you, Malcolm," Harold conceded softly. "Thank you for your years of service, and I deeply regret that we failed to appreciate your worth when you were here." I thanked him for his candor and ended the call. On Monday morning, I formally signed my employment contract with Vanguard Tech Solutions as Principal Systems Architect. I requested a 3-week start delay, granting myself a well-deserved sabbatical to rest, read technical literature, and spend quality time visiting my parents in Ohio. During those 3 weeks, my mind recovered a sense of peace I had not experienced in over a decade. I was no longer waking up at 2 in the morning to check server alerts, nor was I stressing over unfulfilled corporate promises. I spent afternoons helping my father in his shop, discussing circuit designs, and reflecting on the importance of maintaining one's self-respect in a world that often demands uncritical compliance. When I officially commenced my tenure at Vanguard Tech Solutions, the contrast in corporate culture was astonishing. Danielle Palmer and the executive team provided me with full autonomy, cutting-edge server infrastructure, and a brilliant team of engineers who welcomed my mentorship with enthusiasm. In my first 90 days, we successfully streamlined Vanguard's deployment pipelines, reducing server deployment latency by 35% and eliminating recurring infrastructure debt. 4 months into my role, Danielle called me into her office for a quarterly review. "Malcolm, your leadership has transformed our infrastructure reliability. The executive board has approved a proposal to expand our engineering division, and we want you to step into the role of Director of Platform Reliability, overseeing our global architecture strategy." A director role. At Nexus Systems, such an advancement would have required a decade of political maneuvering and compromise. At Vanguard, it was awarded naturally based on concrete results and mutual respect. 6 months later, while attending a national cloud architecture conference in Chicago, I ran into Julian Thorne in the exhibition hall. He looked noticeably less stressed than when I had last seen him. "Malcolm," Julian greeted me warmly. "It is great to see you. I heard you joined Vanguard Tech Solutions as a director." "I did, Julian. How are things progressing at Nexus Systems?" Julian chuckled, shaking his head. "I actually transitioned out of engineering 3 months ago. After you left, management realized I was far better suited for client relations than deep technical architecture. I am now working as a senior technical account manager for a logistics software firm, and I absolutely love it." "That sounds like a perfect match for your skill set, Julian," I said honestly. "It really is," Julian admitted. "And honestly, Malcolm, your departure forced the company to confront a lot of internal flaws. Gordon Bradley was eventually transitioned out of department management after an internal audit revealed how he handled team promotions. Your leaving was the best wake-up call that company ever received." We shared a pleasant conversation before parting ways. There was no lingering animosity between us. The corporate system had simply been flawed, and once the illusion collapsed, everyone eventually found their proper place. 2 years after walking out of Nexus Systems, I was appointed Vice President of Global Infrastructure at Vanguard Tech Solutions. My team had grown to 43 engineers spanning 3 continents, operating one of the most resilient cloud platforms in the software industry. My executive equity had appreciated substantially, securing my financial independence for life. On the second anniversary of my departure from Nexus Systems, my engineering team hosted a surprise celebration in our main department lounge. They presented a custom cake adorned with blue frosting that read, "2 years of not answering the 103 missed calls." Laughter erupted across the room as my team cheered. I stood up, looked at the brilliant group of men and women I had the privilege to lead, and smiled warmly. 2 years ago, I shared with the room, I was trapped in an environment where my contributions were indispensable, yet completely unappreciated. Walking away from that security was daunting, but it taught me an indispensable lesson. Your professional worth does not diminish simply because an incompetent supervisor fails to recognize it. What changes everything is choosing to place yourself in an environment that allows your true value to flourish. As I wrapped up the celebration and returned to my office that evening, I glanced at my phone resting quietly on the desk. The digital log of those 103 missed calls had long since been cleared, but the lesson remained permanently etched in my mind. I had never returned those panicked calls, and I had never regretted that decision for a single second. If this story resonated with your own professional journey, if you have ever been the person quietly holding an entire operation together, while others claim the credit, or if you believe that knowing your self-worth is the ultimate foundation of true success, I invite you to click that subscribe button. This channel is dedicated to every hardworking professional who understands self-respect and lasting career achievement go hand in hand. Thank you for listening, thank you for your support, and remember to always know your worth and never settle for being merely needed when you deserve to be truly valued.